thanks everyone for joining this AMA with Hugo and SpartacusRex. It's very exciting to have you all here yet again. Just a few housekeeping things to let you know. We're recording this session and it will be available on YouTube shortly afterwards. And I'd just like to give a couple of updates of my own, just to say that all withdrawals of the incentive rewards have been processed. We're only getting a handful of new withdrawals coming through each day. So we are aware of an issue withdrawing right now. We're looking into it, and that should be back up and running soon. But that shouldn't affect many of you now. And in the last version, we released a new function that allows you to check your node's keys, and we do recommend doing that. The command is just keys action check keys, and if you tick the little logs box in the terminal, then you'll be able to see those being checked as that's happening. You can scroll up in the latest announcements and you'll see more information on that there, but we do recommend that everyone does that. And if you have any issues, then come to the new check keys channel. So yeah, with all of that aside, I think we will start going through the questions that you've submitted into the stage questions channel. If any of you in the audience have got your own questions, feel free to go to the stage questions channel and put them in there, and we'll pick them up as we go along. So first question from Bose says, when are the languages like Chinese version be available? And when will offline meetups of developers be held? Hugo, you want to go for that one?
Yeah, thanks, Jazmin. Hello, everybody. Hugo here. Great to see you all. Thanks for coming. So in terms of other languages, we're planning to start rolling these out in Q3 and Q4 of this year. We'll be working with our community members to help us do that. I mean, everyone's always been really, really helpful in terms of input from that side of things. So the community team will be reaching out to the speakers, and we'll be working out a sort of a priority in terms of demand, in terms of which languages we go with first. So we'll be working on that. In terms of offline meetups of developers, so as most people know, we're currently working on creating video tutorials to help developers learn on how to build Minima. These sit alongside our documentation that can already be found on the website. And in terms of the developer meetups, again, this is something that we're looking to plan for Q3 to start bringing people on board and to get some real development. But what we wanted to do is make sure that we have as much information out there ahead of that, so that people come well prepared. And so hopefully that'll make it the most productive types of sessions that we can make them.
Yeah, the only things I'd say is that the language change stuff is obviously easy on the Android because that you get a certain file where you put all your text in there. So that would be as simple as, community members filling in the different languages. I'm not sure how we check that to make sure that people were saying the right things, but on the Android front, that's easy. I'm not quite sure, languages, obviously the scripting and the functions, I don't know whether they could change to a different language. So the way you face with the terminal would probably not be changed. So actually, I'm quite sure how much language differences there can be in the Minima core application, but definitely the Android APK, that's quite easy. And as so, since we're all, well, I'm based in the UK and I can get to London, but yeah, that would be really, really nice. I look forward to those.
Great. Yeah, I think we actually had a little meetup recently in Barcelona as well with some of our developers, so that's quite exciting.
Joshua too.
Yeah.
I was there. You had a meet up without me, Jazz.
No, I wasn't there, unfortunately, either.
Oh, right, neither of us was there. Can't be much of a meet up, frankly.
It was good. It was at the MIC, the Mobile World Congress. Adam was there, and yeah, met up with a number of our team, and also the community members in Spain as well, and some of our investors. It was actually a very positive session.
Yes, I'm sure it was. Sorry, I meant that. I meant it was probably really good. I'm sorry I missed it.
Okay, so next question from Zebretta. Could you go into Minima Enterprise Gateway, MEG, a bit? My understanding is that MEG will run on an enterprise's infrastructure and supports business applications integrating Minima data sources. Is my understanding of MEG correct?
So yes, the MEG, the Minima Enterprise Gateway, is a service that would enable enterprises to build business value on the Minima blockchain. It functions as a stateless broker that's hosted with within enterprise infrastructure. And what it does is it sort of standardizes the interaction with Minima, and goes through a combination of HTTPS and APIs and webhooks. And so what it does is it has three main primary interactions. It sort of helps to events gets triggered by specific transactions relating to addresses and tokens, and it also can initiate transactions on behalf of a registered client endpoint, which means that clients can manage a host of nodes that they're running from a centralized point. They're still, obviously, the nodes themselves are decentralized, but there'll be a centralized point where they can manage them from, and it also allows them to then create tokens, create token rules, and then link them to token IDs to the products and services that they're creating.
Ooh, all right. Yeah, nice. Thanks, Hugsy. I'll talk about the tech. If the tech is very simple for MEG. MEG basically does two things. And those two things are, one, it allows you from the outside world to call an API endpoint, and it does something on Minima. And frankly, we've already got that because you can enable RPC and then curl in. So you can actually do curl 127.0// status or whatever. And so you can do an API call from some other box to Minima, and then that will do that function, send, balance, create token, whatever. And the second thing that it does is that when something happens on Minima, it needs to call an external API. And actually, currently, that's possible using the webhooks. So currently, when anything happens, you get a webhook, that it's happened. So it's actually a very, very simple application, and it's more about sort of packaging it in a way. Whenever we see these projects with the enterprise clients, the biggest nightmare is, frankly, all the admin stuff. You need a website that people can log into, and who has access, and do you want logs of when they this is the sort of thing that they want. They want to know who had access, who did what, when did they do it, etc., etc. So the actual Minima sort of stuff is already there. It's more a question of packaging it up into something which is more palatable to businesses, so that they can be more so they can have better records of what is actually going on. So that's what it does. But you can actually, MEG does already, just by curling into Minima or using the webhooks when it comes out. It's just a question of packaging it up into a nicer package.
Okay, cool. Thanks. And perhaps one for you, SpartacusRex. Bose asks, if a dapp runs on Minima, how is the storage solution for data? So I'm guessing they're asking about the data within a mini dapp.
So each mini dapp, when you install it, gets its own folder in the Minima base folder. This can only be accessed by that specific mini dapp. So each mini dapp gets its own, storage. There's no specific limits put on that. That is the limits of whatever your device is, whether it's your phone or whether it's your laptop. So that is where you can, store data. The thing is that it's just for you. So when you install a mini dapp, it's not like everybody that installs a mini dapp gets access to the same data store. Everybody that installs a mini dapp gets access to their data. You also get a SQL database, which you can access, and that is also segregated from all the other applications. So all of this stuff is automatically done by the mini dapp. The tricky part is that the only real way of communicating with other users on the network is either via Maxima or via the Minima blockchain itself. So when you do transactions or whatever, clearly everybody on the network gets that. When you do a Maxima transaction, then only the person you're speaking to gets that, and then everything else is just for you. And that can prove it. That's its own challenge, actually. Coming up with applications that operate in that environment is quite tricky sometimes. But yeah, you have that automatically when you install a mini dapp, but it's just accessible by you and your mini dapp and no one else. That's the thing.
Okay, great, thanks. And next we've got quite a long one, so I'm going to read through it. Bear with me. From DNA, who says, as always, thank you and the team for your great efforts. I'll be by your side till the end, whichever the outcome might be. Let me play the devil's advocate for a sec, if you will. I'm starting to think that the average person / consumer either does not care at all about decentralization and censorship resistance, or does not understand the potential benefits and improvements it can bring to their lives. This, together with the inherent competitive and selfish nature of the human being, leads me to think that engaging people into running Minima nodes, now that mainnet is dive and hence no rewards associated, will not be possible until a mega killer mini dapp with true value or usefulness for the average consumer is deployed. And I mean something really big and different from what we know now, not just a variant of already existing and very well implemented products in the market today, like messaging or social networks. So thinking of the short-term growth of Minima nodes and network, the only solution I see is going into IoT devices, i.e. implementing Minima protocol in every possible chip out there, from cars to housing appliances. That will bring the necessary amount of nodes to make the Minima network secure and interesting enough for more developers to come build into it and help bring that killer mini dapp. Still thinking myself what that could be. That will, with time, get people on board to use it, and as a result, increase exponentially the number of running nodes and value of the whole network. So to summarize, the only way I see right now Minima growing is machines first, then people. What do you think?
Well, shall I go first? You want to go? Hugsy's the one that loves the IoT devices. I mean, I love the IoT device as well, and I think everything you've said is actually perfectly correct. How are we going to get people to use Minima? The original game plan was that Minima was going to be transparent to the user. What I mean by that is that you wouldn't even know you're running it. What I mean by that is that somebody else would write an application. Originally, it was going to be tokens on mobile networks and paying for airtime. We actually spoke to telcos and they did that. I'll be honest, I think it was them who weren't ready. Very slow, the telcos, when we interfaced with them. But yeah, you shouldn't even really know that you're running Minima. It should all just be happening in the background, and you just use whatever application you're using, and that uses Minima. I think it's very true about the killer mini dapp. And what I think you said, which I believe is very pertinent, is that it shouldn't just be a remake or a reskin of an application that they've got. So one application which I always think could be good is Max Chat. So we've got Max just a proof of concept. It's just one-to-one. It's really not powerful enough to take on WhatsApp or Telegram, but they all look exactly the same. And I know that deep down there's no reason why we shouldn't get a mini dapp that looks exactly the same as WhatsApp. But will you actually get people to stop using WhatsApp, even if you tell them that WhatsApp are reading all their messages? Do they care that WhatsApp are reading all their messages and using that and to fire adverts at you? As I know, we all know that. Yeah, you can have a chat about VR in WhatsApp, and the next day when you go on Amazon, all you see is VR adverts. And I agree, it's very hard to get people to swap using an application to use an application which looks exactly the same but is censorship resistant and decentralized and all these things that frankly they don't actually care about. And what I would say to that is that, as I have said before, I'm not sure that we are the ones like Minima GmbH. I believe that you are the ones who will have to come up with this killer dapp. What is this killer dapp? I have ideas for different applications that I would like to see and I would like to use, but is that going to be the one that sets the world on fire? I can't give you an answer to that. These things are ephemeral, and they happen, and there's nothing you can do to plan it other than trying 1,000 different things, and one of them will work and 999 of them won't work. So I agree with you that we have all the pieces in place though. So it's not like we don't have a nice application ecosystem. We don't, we have what it would take for someone to write that kind of application. Is it gambling? Is it chat and communication? Is it NFT swapping, etc., etc.? I don't know. But I know we're going to have to go through 1,000 different iterations of different applications to come up with the one that actually sets the world on fire for that approach.
But yeah, and I think, firstly, I mean, I think it's very, very well worded, eloquent question, and I think it's something that Paddy and I have always sort of agreed on, in terms of the fact that we look at it from a top down and bottom up approach, because I think that absolutely getting people to run it on their nodes, we've proven that that's now possible, but obviously we were incentivizing people to do that. I mean, while there are still rewards for people who were in the IC system, who helped us launch the network, we do need to move to incentivizing people to be running, or incentivizing devices to run it, because the utility that the network will provide. And if you take the fact that by 2030 there's going to be 140 billion connected devices in the world, and without a lightweight, secure and cheap way of communicating, communicating and also transferring value, these devices won't be able to operate, so interoperate and interact. And Minima's unique offering will allow these devices to interoperate and interact. These devices won't need to rely on centralized servers. They won't need to rely on centralized miners or validators to communicate and transfer value. And we're already working with enterprise partners to deliver new ways of making autonomous payments device to device. We're working on ways for real-time device-to-device messaging that bypasses intermediaries, that, because of the nature of the decentralized stress up, they're also secure and also GDPR compliant, and also sealing and chaining the data on any device to ensure the data integrity and provenance, which effectively will help analytics and decision making. As a lot of you'll be aware, we've been working with Mobility X Labs since last year. This includes companies like Volvo, Polestar, Lynk & Co and CVT, which is part of the Geely Auto. And we trialed secure messaging and value transfer between vehicles, because vehicles run on Android, and Minima is the only solution that can run in full on the head units of vehicles. We're currently working on an exciting demo to be a payment rails for electric vehicle charging. There are going to be 250 million electric vehicles on the road within the next decade, and public charging infrastructure cannot scale with this demand. So the solution that we're looking at with car manufacturers is to increase charging infrastructure by enabling private users to install charging boxes in their homes, and rent these boxes out to their neighbors and anyone else, in fact, so that they can earn income. And obviously that is the beauty about a decentralized blockchain. It allows sort of permissionless payments between users. And we're at a demo stage now with a number of car manufacturers on this EV charging, and if it's successful, then the first deployment will be 100,000 units. And of course, in order for people to come and pay for charging, they'll need to download the Minima app to make these payments. So I agree that in that instance, it would be machines first, then people. And as Paddy says, the aim for Minima is to be sort of hidden in the background in the future. I mean, people always talk about how you're going to bring 1 billion new users into crypto, and actually I think that in many ways people won't be coming into crypto, they're just be coming into the new way of interacting with each other, and that'll be led by consumer-led companies that will be using Minima as the rails on which to build these new payment solutions, these new communications, these new ways of communicating between each other. So in that respect, I think it'll be, I have to say, I agree with the comment that it'll be generally to get mass adoption, you're looking at machines first, then people.
And of course, I mean, just to reiterate the point that there are 100 times more machines out there, and that's not to say that getting it to work on the phones and getting it to work with with you, our our wonderful community, is an excellent test bed. We have learnt so much in the last 3 months just from getting you all to run it in the wild, for real, not in a test environment, and all of that filters down. All of that is helpful in making the system leaner and meaner and cleaner and sharper and faster, etc., etc. So this is a great starting point. We have a large network that we can test stuff out on. All of that is helpful. It's not like they're two different projects. They are the same projects. But it does occur to me that if we do get 100 million devices, then the human part of the network is going to be infinitesimally small compared to the machine-to-machine part of the network. And so yeah, that's it's almost like when those floodgates are open, the sky's the limit. There's no limit to how many different machines will try to access the network. So that is very exciting. We are definitely aiming for that, and we just need to keep working on the product to make it more stable and more resilient and sturdier and less crashy. Blah blah blah. The same usual.
Yeah, definitely very exciting indeed. Great, thanks for that. Okay, next question from Makushka says, when will you make the bridge?
The Minima to Wrap Minima bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, so Mini Swap is meant to be our bridge. So Mini Swap, the dapp that is going to be released this week, if you ask me. Yeah, it's basically ready. We've given it to the testers. They found it a little bit complicated. We're going to be adding some text to explain how it works. But the tech works. The contracts are deployed. You can now do trustless swaps from native Minima to a token or whatever on the Ethereum network. And what I really like about that bridge, as always, not to sound like a scratch record, is that it's decentralized. The problem with bridges that are cross-chain is that there's always an element of trust. There just simply isn't the technology. No bridge is not trusted. There isn't a trustless automatic bridge that you can just run and forget about, and nobody has to look at it, and it just works. So I think I want us to be very, very careful when we start launching this technology, because I don't want it to be a central point of failure. There are ways of doing it, and all of them basically require somebody to be in charge of the bridge and somebody to have, if not, it doesn't mean they can steal funds, but it does mean that they can, stop funds going across the bridge. They can close the bridge down. So it's more a question of, what sort of bridge are we going to build? And like I said, Mini Swap's nice because it's decentralized. I can't turn it off. Once we launch that application, people can swap Minima for native Minima, wrap Minima for Minima, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop you doing that, and I can't turn it off. So that I really like, and I would like an addition to that. I mean, drilling deeper, what that might mean is writing a mini dapp that allows you to host an order book. This is something I always talk about with the team, and actually the hardest part of these things is how to find people to swap with. Where is the order book? Where is the list of what people out there are prepared to swap what for what? That could be that in and of itself is a great addition, a decentralized addition. If anybody can run an order book, then anybody can post on anybody's order book. If one order book gets taken down, there's loads of others that are remaining. I like that idea. Yeah. But as always, we sort of, it's not that we hobble ourselves. It's that we are so determined to keep this thing decentralized, because there is always two options, and one of them's easy and centralized, and one of them's hard and decentralized. And it's really important that I'm sorry to say, we take the harder option and that we stick with the decentralization. So that is really the only hold up on this bridge. Yeah, how are we going to do it in a way that has, if any trust, the least trust possible? And that's quite hard. Thank you.
Yeah. And also, just to clarify, because I see someone's asked whether it will support Polygon network or the BEP20.
Yep, I mean, actually, the code works on any EVM. We've only done it to the Ethereum chain, and we've only, because you need a contract on the chain that does all this hash time lock stuff. But it would definitely work on any other EVM chain. Let's get it out working on mainnet ETH to start with, and then in the future we can add the other EVM chains. Solana even works, etc., etc. So yeah, it will do. And actually, I think we've released the we're going to have the repo, so other people can have a look at how we've done it. Sorry, that's been in a private repo up until now. It should have been public, frankly, but it is now. I'll check if it's public. It's definitely on the Minima Global repo site, so other people can have a pop at trying to integrate this into other EVM chains. But there's no reason why it shouldn't. Yeah, it totally works.
Cool. Okay. So next, another question about mini dapps being in native language. The next one from Prinzi is, when is native minima be tradable? When will native minima be tradable?
So, I mean, in order for native minima to be tradable, well, it's already tradable peer-to-peer, but in order for it to be tradable on centralized exchanges, we need to integrate with Minima with Rosetta, which is the middleware used by centralized exchanges to connect decentralized infrastructure with centralized infrastructure via API calls. And this is something we've been working on, and the plan is to have this ready by Q4.
The Rosetta gives you Huobi and Coinbase and Binance, and frankly, that's probably most of the market. But obviously, you can just integrate Minima without using Rosetta on some of the smaller exchanges, and I probably prefer that actually. Have all the lots of little exchanges and just the big. But really, the issue is, just to say from a technical point of view, is that Minima is written from the ground up to sort of be a single player game. Yeah, you run the Minima node. That's why it's so small. That's why it runs on your phone. And as soon as you start having, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, God forbid, 100 million Coinbase users trying to access your Minima node, that's just not going to work. The MMR database, the way that it's written, just simply isn't geared towards that. So what we have found is that we are having to reverse some of the things we have done to keep Minima really lean and tight and small. Just so that it stores all the, for instance, a version of Minima that stores all the coins, a version of Minima that allows any user to have proofs for any of their coins. I call it the mega MMR, and we have POCs of that, proof of concepts of that ticking along. But it's a very different paradigm. The whole of Minima is not geared towards that. So that's why it's taken a bit of time to get right. There's nothing to stop somebody trying to integrate Minima into it. But like I said, it's not geared towards having tens of thousands of users using the same node. If you gave everybody their own node, then that would work. I suppose a clever way of doing it would be to have people running their own nodes. Yeah, the way Minima operates, and then to somehow integrate that into the centralized exchanges so that, if there was a way of doing that, that would probably be the best way. But no one has yet come up with that, and it's definitely on my pile of things to do. But that's why it's taken a bit of time. I'm sorry about that. Just going to have to wait.
Interesting. Thanks. Okay, so now we've got a couple of similar questions, so I'll kind of roll them into one. General questions about future plans for development of interest in Minima, future directions, and improving developer interest on Minima.
Well, I have got a list of 10 videos that I've got to do, and I think that will help. Start from the basics: how to run a node, how to run a private network, how to write a mini dapp from starters, how to then integrate service.js, etc., etc. Try to keep them to 5 to 10 minutes, and I think that will help. The truth is, sorry, go, Hugsy.
No. So yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that's on your top of your list, Paddy. It's basically what we'll be doing to bring on board developers to help them understand how Minima works. In terms of the communications, again, we will continue to be doing AMAs, not just here in the community, but also externally as well, to bring on board new people, to make them understand and to appreciate what we are building. And then we'll be also looking at enterprise engagements and announcements as well. As I say, we're sort of working through those with the demos phase at the beginning, and then once they get accepted through, then making announcements about those. We're also working on a number of initiatives to showcase and make use of Minima's unique ability to mint NFTs directly on devices. And we're planning a number of projects, initiatives that will have real world NFT offerings, both within the community for Minima rewards, but also externally as well, with some third parties who are sort of Web 2 coming into Web 3, and so we're in talks with those. So hopefully we'll be able to announce those in the coming weeks.
Cool. Okay. So next question from Ivochi. Will you continue to optimize power consumption? Currently, the power consumption of the Android client is still relatively high. So we've had a couple of questions about performance of the node.
Optimize the power consumption. That's an interesting way of putting it. I mean, I've got a very, very low end £100 Qbot phone that I'm running on, and with just Minima, it lasts for 3 days. So either there's something happening with that phone, or I'm pretty happy with the battery usage on Minima at the moment. What I would say is that, you have to do the work, and the work is what secures the network. So none of that is wasted. Yeah, that is essential to the security of the network. And, the proof of the work that you do is, what Minima requires to operate. So it's not just a question of saying, well, everyone's going to do half as much now, and so we've done less work, because then all that will happen is the network will be half as secure. So if it were up to me, what needs to be optimized is not the POW, it's the rest of the application, so that it uses even less RAM and even less processing and even less CPU cycles, et cetera, et cetera. That's probably where optimizations can help in an efficiency sense, since I don't consider POW efficiency as a thing. POW is useful in and of itself. POW is a requirement. So if there is to be efficiency gains, they're going to, I can't make the SHA-3 algorithm any faster. I can't, do that, but I can make the rest of the application run faster. And we may find that that's actually where a lot of the wastage is going.
Okay, thanks. And also from Ivochi, is there any exciting news you can share?
So, I mean, as I say, as Paddy mentioned, we should be launching Miniswap very soon. I mean, hopefully this week, if not next week. We've been testing with our community. We've had feedback, and we're just improving a number of things on the UI and UX front end, but that should be ready to launch very soon. We also have the LP staking again. This will be for wrapped Minima to earn by staking wrapped Minima in the Uniswap pool, and also it's very exciting to see one of our community create a dashboard to look at the TVL, the total value locked of Minima on the Maximize mini dapp that we launched 2 weeks ago, and so if you go onto there, it's minimablock.com. You can actually see that now running, and that was actually came through from from one of our community members. So we were very happy to see that coming from externally, looking at Minima, and then obviously we'll also hopefully be able to announce our and also sort of send out examples of our demo in terms of the automotive EV charging demo that we've been working on as well. So I hope to be able to share that as well in the coming weeks.
So yeah, the mini swap and the LP staking, the staking of the LP tokens you get for staking wrapped Minima and ETH on Uniswap pool. Those two are two nice products. I think they're going to make a big difference. Actually, I think they're sort of real nice core low level pieces. But I just a small rant, I think now. I do notice, that Minima GmbH, me, Hugo, the rest of the team, what I see as our purpose in this mission that we are on is to write the first implementation of the Minima protocol. I'm a techie, I'm a nerd, I'm not a marketing man, I'm not a trader, I'm not I'm good at maths and blah, 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 but that is a very different skill to, understanding the markets and knowing how to push a product out and knowing how to get different people to use your product, et cetera, et cetera. And not to put all the weight on you, but I do feel that Minima GmbH is here to write the protocol. That's what we know how to do. That's what we're good at. We're going to optimize the application. We're going to make the Android APK as slick as can be. We're going to make the Minima core Java application as smooth and as small and as fast as it is possible to make it. But as for the rest of the stuff, as for getting new users, as for doing exciting things, as for writing these killer mini dapps, then the community, I'm going to have to say that, you are the larger part of that. You are the ones who are really going to have to do that, because that's, there's 1,000 times more of you than there are of us. And I just wanted to say that there is some of this that needs to be coming from external, that isn't going to be coming from internal, no matter what we try, not because we don't want to, but because it's just not our thing, because we're not capable of doing everything. And that is why the community is so important. That's why you lot are, so essential to the future and success of Minima.
But we will be helping you as much as we can along the way.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of bright minds out there, and it would be great to have external people also contributing.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's what it needs.
That's the questions I've got written down. Let me just have a look in the stage questions channel. Okay, so someone's asking, does Maximize work with cold storage offline signing? Let me go back. So someone asked, DNA, is there a kind of cold storage solution for this Maximize Minidapp process? I mean, a kind of send no signed command to produce a file to be signed on an offline device. What do you
If you
recommend
wipe your
for that?
keys, yeah, I mean, there's no reason why Maxima shouldn't work with an address that has, when someone refers to an offline node in Minima terms, since it's up to you to run your node to keep track of your proofs in your MMR database, you should always run a Minima node, but you can wipe the keys. It is possible for you. I mean, you can do vault lock, where you actually lock them with a password, which is probably the best option. But if you, for the ultimate security, so that even if they could crack RSA, no one could access the coins, you can just wipe the private keys. And what you can do is you can keep on your offline node the signing, the private key. So what you would do is you'd have an offline node with the keys vault password locked, and you would have an online node without any keys. With your online node without any keys, it's perfectly possible to get an address. You can receive funds, you can generate addresses, you can do all of that. You can get an address that has already been generated. You can't generate a new address. And you could send your Maximize funds to that address. So yeah, you can send the funds to a cold wallet if you so desire. But you should always run your own node just to keep track of your own coins. But yeah, it's possible.
Okay, cool, thanks.
And in fact, just to say about this whole Maximize thing, which I think has been, a great success, frankly, I really, really like the Maximize page that the gentleman has set up, which shows the TVL, because that was totally unexpected, totally known. It just happened out of the blue. And it was really nice to see that, really nice to see that someone had come up with something completely fresh without being asked, that does something very cool. I love that page. And he's got a little bonus for that. And that's a really nice, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those are the sort of things that Minima needs to take over the world. Yeah, we need people to come up with stuff like that. Very simple, well, for a hyper intelligent nerd like him, but a really, really good example of what is required from the community for this to really take off.
Definitely. Okay, so one we've covered before, but somebody's asking it again about the pre-sale price. Pre-sale price was 21 cents and now 6. Why?
People selling coins.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the moment, what we're looking to do is drive awareness and demand for Minima. Part of that is going to come through from the LP staking for wrap Minima, and then also Miniswap now will allow us to go from Minima to the EVM ecosystem, and then really we're looking to drive demand both in terms of NFT activity that we'll be looking towards, and also the enterprise engagements where we're again going from machine to people, and once we get that and awareness of that, then I think that will help really drive buy pressure and interest in Minima, and then will have a positive effect.
And I mean, yes, I know that things can be boiled down to a single number, and I know that the price is, with all respect to everybody, I know that that is what matters to most people. It's not the decentralization or the censorship resistant, all this. It's like price, when moon, when am I going to be rich? And I think that's perfectly acceptable. That is the cleanest incentive. That is the one that drives most people in the crypto space. But what I would say about the minimum price is that the book is thin. Yeah, it's not like we're trapped underneath this huge wall of millions and millions of dollars of selling pressure. Yeah, it would only take a small spark for a fire to rage. And so, when I look at the price, I look at the book depth. The price could be higher, the depth of the book could be the same. So actually, I think what matters is that you need to get more people in on the, more people, who knows about Minima? What ecosystem are we servicing? What economy uses Minima currently? There isn't one. What do people need Minima for? They don't currently. So currently, the price is simply a function of the speculators that are trying to make money out of Minima. I'm not belittling all of the work that we're putting in, and all of that is obviously essential and wonderful. But currently, it is a very, very small thing, Minima. It's just not a large enough coin to warrant or to deserve a higher price, in my honest opinion. And that can only come with time and users and usage, etc., etc. And that's a very clear correlation, and it's simply a function that we're too tiny. Yeah, we're just not large enough to have the sort of liquidity that is required for the price to be going up. And you can see that simply because the liquidity is so low, as in the book is so thin. And unfortunately, there's really nothing we can do about that, other than espouse about Minima, talk about Minima, get people interested in Minima. I did a podcast on Friday on the Bitfinex thing, and I look forward to all you hearing it. You must be bored to death by now of me trying to explain the same thing in so many different ways. But every time I talk to people in the industry about Minima, they love it. Every time I tell them what Minima tries to do, they get it. Every time I, explain the reason it has to be decentralized, because that's the only known way of having censorship resistant, and that's the only reason you would use a blockchain in the first place, and it's not for any of these other features, because frankly, blockchains are incredibly slow and rubbish at everything except this one thing that nothing does. They understand. And so if I was talking to these people and they were like, yeah, you're another POS chain, or yeah, so you're trying to do Solana differently, that's not what they say. That's not what I receive from people when I'm talking to them about it. And I definitely feel, I know that there is something there. I know that Minima does something that resonates. And I'm sorry we haven't broken through to the other side yet. But I do believe it's just a matter of time. So please please hang in there.
Yeah, and speaking of use cases, Katerina's asking about the MIC winners and where they're at. And actually, I should say that I had a look at the DBay winner the other day, was playing around with that. So that one's coming along well. And they are still out there and working on their mini dapps. I don't know if Hugo.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, no, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, DBay is really interesting, and also, the work that MBoard did with offline payments is part of the solution that we are working on in terms of the EV charging, so that people can actually pay for EV charging even if the device is offline. So this is something that we're already seeing exciting developments in Minima in general based on the work that these guys have been doing. So again, as Paddy says, thank you to the community who coming in and giving us all of these ideas and solutions, because we are, we take them on board, and where we can, we sort of start to integrate them. So again, without MIC, we wouldn't be in the same place that we are now with our EV charging demos. So yeah, that was a really useful idea that came through, and something that we're definitely sort of moving forward with.
Yeah.
Okay, and what else have we got? So, I mean, I know the answer to this one already, but I know someone says, I know that turning off Minima is not based on rational battery consumption figures, but I do not like the idea of having an app running in the background. What do you think of an on-demand running app? So basically only switching Minima on when you use it.
I'm going to have to say, what is it worth to you to be independent and sovereign? I mean, I had exactly this chat with Hugo a few days ago, and I've said this, a few times throughout, and I've wondered whether Minima simply asks too much of its users, by which I mean, if it were the case that you could be your own bank and you could look after your own money, but it required you to pay attention for 5 minutes every day. If that's what Minima needed from you, it says, look, you need to give me 5 minutes of your time every single day. Is that too much? Are we expecting too much of our users to require them to do that? Which is, frankly, I've got 7 different nodes running on various different machines and phones, and every day I look at each one of them and I check it and I see if it's working, and 99.999% of the time everything's fine. And sometimes I had a Java lang memory error, or I had something and I have to quit it and restart it, and on the off chance once a month I have to do a chain resync, la la la. And I know I rattle these things off as if they're nothing, and yet I know I've already lost 90% of you. I know what I've already said is already too much, and the idea that you wouldn't want to run your own bank every day because it's a hassle is sort of the antithesis of what Minima is here to do. You're trying to be your own bank. You're saying, well, look, I sort of want to run it, a little bit. I want to do it for 10 minutes. I'll have it running for 10 minutes a day, but I don't want it to be running the rest of the time. And it's like, well, that can be fixed in time. As I said earlier, this should be transparent. You shouldn't even know that it's running. It should just be ticking along in the background. You've got WhatsApp running all day. That doesn't seem to bother you. You've got Telegram running all day. You've got Facebook. You've got all these other applications that are there always, so that when you get a message, you know that you've got the message, etc., etc. Minima should be like that. It should just be running in the background, no issues, no problems. Are we there yet? No. Have we reached that level of robustness and that level of technical prowess to have an application that never crashes? Not yet. But that is where we are trying to get to. And so hopefully what will happen is that by the end of our tinkering with the application, it will just run, and you won't even know that it's running, and it'll just be there in the background all the time, and it won't be an issue. So you won't even have to ask yourself this question. But I agree that we are not quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Paddy. I mean, it's the journey we're on, and we're going from the initial stage of almost the bootstrapping period, where obviously everything is new, and also, to be honest, still relatively clunky compared to centralized applications. But as soon as you have the ability to earn money from the electric vehicle charger that you have in your house, and people come and park there and they come and charge up, and you're actually earning money from that. As soon as you can get access to, through access control to your vehicle, you buy a car in order to be able to access it and drive it. You have a Minima app that then gives you an NFT to allow you to drive your car around. All of those kind of things. Those are the kind of things though where you would be crazy in yourself not to want to be running these things. But we need to get to that stage where it's so easy and such a small burden on your device that this is where it then becomes sort of second nature. And this is where we see, connecting billions of devices together in a way that doesn't rely on anyone else, isn't at the behest of centralized servers in terms of costs for enterprise, in terms of different countries having different rules. I mean, a protocol should be able to run just simply between the devices themselves, and then once it does that, then the good thing is, if we go into devices machine to machine, then the machine is not going to be complaining about having to run it every day. It's just going to be part of inbuilt in its own makeup, and that's something that becomes then that's when it becomes the internet layer for value transfer, and that's the big goal that we're aiming for, and that's the journey that we're heading towards.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Okay, so Katerina seems to be, she says she seems to think that there's not much interest in Minima. How do you plan to develop the project without doing anything that could interest new people and new corporations? I mean, we have talked quite a lot about what we're planning to do in the future already on this call.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
So
as I say, I think it's about getting awareness out there through AMAs and also through enterprise, and the enterprise clients have a huge customer base, and so if we get deployment through them, then this is the top down, where effectively, if you want to use the cool new product that comes along, then Minima helps to be the rails for that, either through value transfer or data transfer. Then that is where Minima will come into its own.
yeah, cool, thanks. And also having a lot of positive comments. My Android node resyncs perfectly, so I
think the other thing, actually, sorry, just to say from that side of things, I mean, Paddy, I think I'm right in saying that we've had 100% uptime since mainnet launch. Is that correct?
That is correct, Hugsy, and that's not a given. Anybody who's played with any of the current crop of new kids on the blockchain will know that having 100% uptime is not something that is a given, and that chains out there do stop and have to be restarted by whoever it is that is in charge of them. But no, I mean, that is a function of decentralization of Minima. It's almost impossible for the Minima chain to stop because there's always so many of you building the chain. So so far we have had 100% uptime, and not even big bad beautiful Bitcoin can claim that. So I'm very happy with that, and long may it last.
Right. Just check stage questions one last time. 1-3. Would Minima work on Mars?
Very good question. I'm going to have to say that only if we make the block time more, because the distance to Mars is about 7 minutes. What's the speed of light from Earth to Mars? You'd probably be running a sidechain, frankly, if I had to be completely honest. But yeah, I mean, even Bitcoin doesn't work on Mars, so it might have to just be global Earth Federation where you store, and then side chains for the rest of the universe. Sorry, Mothri.
Interesting. Okay, I think we'll leave it there in that case. Thank you.
Why do you and Hugo have the little shield emblem, and I don't have that? What is that?
Because we're the best.
Because you're special.
We're special, yes.
All right, cool.
I don't know why you don't have it, actually. Okay, any final words?
So no,
Hugsy?
just to say thank you everybody for your continued support, and also good questions as well. As I say, that was DNA, great question, in terms of that debate between M2M first, then people. I mean, I'm a big fan of that, and I think there will hopefully be lots more information about that coming through as we keep progressing. But again, thanks again for everyone's support. I really appreciate it.
Yep, and I would say thank you all, as always, for sticking with us and working with us to try and make Minima, the application that it can be. Ask not what Minima can do for you, but what you can do for Minima. You're not just backseat, nothing. You are the community. You are Minima. Far more so than in any other crypto out there. The Minima network is not us. We run 0.001% of the nodes that are on the network. The network is you, and that applies to everything. So when you're thinking, how am I going to get engagement on Minima? Well, how are we going to get engagement? How are you going to get engagement on Minima? Who are you going to tell? How can we all try and get more people interested and involved in this very exciting project that clearly has something to offer which isn't being offered by anything else? And I will help you in any way that I can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And we'll see all of you in the channels.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.